All right, everyone. Steve Metrics here, No Debate Sports. Waiting on my guy DJ Triggs. We'll see if he makes it tonight. He's a little under the weather tonight, so it's probably going to be me steering the ship. But that's okay. We work together. We got the games going. We know a lot about going over a lot of the games from the weekend. We got some Monday Night Football action going tonight, and I'm going to drive us through this show. So here we go. So again, we're here tonight, 7 o'clock tonight and tomorrow. And you can catch us here on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We are everywhere. As long as our socials below here as well, you can see those too. So going through these games, pretty big upsets over the weekend, and definitely saw some teams really show that these teams are for real and really good as well. Definitely one of the cool games I want to go over is Atlanta and Detroit. So with Detroit, they pretty much showed that they're pretty much a for real team in the NFC North. So this is a team that has a very high potent offense, but they're also starting to show it on defense as well. So when they played the Atlanta Falcons, for sure Atlanta wants to run through you with Bijan Robinson. They held him and Tyler Algier to just 45 yards on the day. So very impressive from that team. And it also showed, too, that they really had the struggles throwing the ball as well. So basically that whole offense of Atlanta goes through Bijan Robinson. It's very similar to Dallas, right? They just want to manage the game, play good defense, and run through you and hope that their quarterback doesn't make any mistakes. But on the flip side of that is you really have no respect for the passing game. So when it came to the passing game for Atlanta, you had Drake London and Matt Collins only had 3 receptions. And now through 3 weeks, we have Desmond Ridder for about 550 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. So definitely not the greatest stats that we have to go off of here for Desmond Ridder to start this season. The thing from Detroit is without David Montgomery, you still had Jahmyr Gibbs carrying the rock, and he took all but 3 carries. I want to say it was about 17-ish carries on the day, and he averaged about 4 yards per carry. So very, very impressive going on with that. And the main way that a team like Detroit is going to have real success against Atlanta is Atlanta's very stingy outside. So you really want to hit them in the middle of the field. So between both Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta, they combined for 17 receptions, 186 yards, and a touchdown. So really, really impressive stats from the slot positions of Detroit. So that's how you attack Atlanta's defense. And Detroit really, really did well with that. So let's go from that game and let's go to New England and the Jets. Definitely not as good looking offensive game whatsoever. Pretty much both teams definitely have the same struggles, right? They both have similar quarterbacks that are not that great, and they have defenses that truly are great. So especially with the Jets, we know they're going to stop you outside, and the Patriots are pretty much just all around a great defense. They can neutralize the run game. They can neutralize the pass game pretty much everywhere. And looking at that, that's how New England took care of this game. So especially on the defensive side, they had a day. They had a safety. They had 7 tackles for loss. They had 7 hits, 3 sacks, and 5 pass deflections. So really, really good stats for that defense yesterday. And it looks pretty good. But yeah, I'm on the offensive side of New England. Little interesting on how they ran ball. They split carries between Zeke and Ramondre Stevenson, and they did it very well. So you had 16 carries with Zeke, and you had 19 carries with Ramondre Stevenson. Combined, I want to say they were at 100 yards for the day. So pretty impressive with those guys. The O-line for New England is excellent. They had 0 sacks given up. He had only 5 hits on Mac Jones, and he also had 2 tackles for the loss between Zeke and Stevenson. So real solid there. Really good game by those guys. Looking on the Jets side, they are completely neutralized on offense. Zach Wilson is not an NFL quarterback. That is definitely proven over the last 3 weeks since Aaron Rodgers has gone out. You have no respect for him, and you have no respect for the run game. So this was the first week that Garrett Wilson has not had a touchdown. He was neutralized to about 40 yards receiving, and the entire run game of Brees Hall and Dalvin Cook. And yeah, we love those guys, but they really only ran for about 30 yards. So that's it. Just absolutely no respect for that Jets offense whatsoever. So from that game, let's go to a game that we thought was going to have a team with loaded offense up against a team that we got some questions about. But main thing that we've noticed between Houston and Jacksonville is Jacksonville's got a great offense, and Houston has pieces really coming in place. This is now the 3rd straight week that Houston's quarterback, CJ Stroud, has thrown for about 300 yards on the day. So he did that in this game. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Again, it's almost his 3rd straight 300-yard game, especially for a team that kind of had some question marks with the offensive line. But it looked like he did pretty well with that. And especially, too, with his receiver, Tank Dell, now being fully healthy. And that guy just runs circles around opposing teams' secondaries. He had 145 yards, a touchdown off of 5 receptions. So really impressive day there from Tank Dell. So yeah, pretty solid. When it came to the defensive side of Houston, and we know this is definitely a defensive philosophy head coach that they have there with the Texans, but the way they stopped the outside of the Jacksonville Jaguars was impressive. Between Calvin Ridley and Jamal Agnew, they only gave up about 90 yards, which between those 2 receivers is tough. It's very tough with that. But their slot game was completely exposed. Between Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, you had 121 yards, you had 11 receptions, and you had Kirk with that 1 touchdown between the 2 of them. So when it comes to Houston, when you are playing fantasy guys, when you are playing against that defense, best way to attack them through the air is the middle of the field. When it comes to Jacksonville, they're like the opposite. They are very stingy against the slot. So they only allowed 56 yards to the slot receivers of like John Mechie, Robert Woods, and then the tight end Dalton Schultz. Pretty much nothing there. But they will allow you they will actually allow a little bit more stuff going on outside, especially like with what Tank Dell did. So you got that. For Jacksonville, this was probably the best week that their O-line performed, right? So they had only 5 hits on Trevor Lawrence, no sacks, and 1 tackle for loss. So pretty solid game there from the offensive line standpoint. But there's something with this offense. I don't know what it is, whether it's all the weapons, whether Trevor Lawrence is still feeling a little flustered with the offensive line. Something with Jacksonville is just a little bit off. So I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation they got with the Jaguars, but I mean, on paper they look loaded. So it is what it is. I mean, granted, they had 28 points taken off the board last week against the Chiefs for guys standing out of bounds on a catch, but it is what it is. So see what we got out of Jacksonville next week. With that, we'll go to those Kansas City Chiefs that they just played against. And they pretty much put up a showing against Chicago. They showed that they're a for real team, that they're pretty solid for as long as they do actually have Travis Kelce in that lineup and also Chris Jones on the defensive side. And when it came to that defense, they didn't let Chicago do anything. I thought it was interesting when I first got to that game on Sunday. There were only 10 passes from Justin Fields in the entire first half. And at that point, they were losing about 35-0. So pretty bizarre how that offense works. And I figured, okay, if that's the case, then they probably ran the ball a lot. No, they did not really run the game at all. between Justin Fields, Roshan Johnson, and Khalil Herbert, it was 26 carries, and 11 of those were from Justin Fields. So this offense really is at a loss. And then the whole defense just completely collapsed. I mean, that's going to happen when your defensive coordinator is rated by the FBI. That is totally a wild situation they had going on there. Yeah, if you want to learn more about that, it is all over the internet. So yeah, that's kind of how they dealt with that. And but yeah, Chicago looks really rough. But Kansas City looked solid, and plus they really upped their evolution of offense with really establishing the run. And Chicago's not a team that like you're scared that they have the ball much and that offense is really churning. And I mean, their best weapon, DJ Moore, is barely getting the ball in any receptions outside of garbage time. So it was interesting to see that Kansas City really ran the ball well against the Chicago Bears. So it was pretty much split both between Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And when you get to the goal line, you get that Jared McKinnon package with him, and he does kind of that style that Travis Kelce does at the goal line as well. So pretty impressive stuff there. But yeah, Pacheco and Clyde Edwards-Helaire both had almost identical stat lines. They both basically had 15 carries, about 60 yards, and a touchdown on the day on top of the 2 touchdowns that Jerick McKinnon had. So real solid there. It was pretty interesting too. All of the wide receivers had success against Chicago, whether you were outside or inside or the tight end. And Kelce had that touchdown towards the end of the game as well. So pretty impressive that you had that going on there. And in the outside, it looks like Rashee Rice is really starting to step up. So I know he had the majority of the receptions, but between him, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and Justin Watson, they combined for 8 receptions and 147 yards. So I think now you're really starting to see that Rashee Rice is that main outside target for Patrick Mahomes. And then you have in the inside, you have Sky Moore in the slot, and you got Travis Kelce in that tight end position as well. So who that other number 2 wideout is, we still got to figure that out. But it's getting better and more. I guess it's giving us more confidence that this team is really starting to figure out its identity on offense to keep that defense off the field. And when the defense does have to make plays, they can make those plays. So just real solid that now that run game is starting to get going. So that's what we got there between the Chiefs and the Chicago Bears. So from that, we're going to go to a game that's a little tough, especially for me to swallow. And that's the Steelers and the Raiders. So this was a game. This was the home opener for the Raiders. Definitely thought that this could have been a game that maybe the Raiders step up a little bit on defense. Definitely not as scary of an offense like the Bills presented last week. But that wasn't the case. At times, there were definitely good plays in the secondary by Vegas. But then you had some certain runs that definitely went well for the Steelers. And just that chemistry between Kenny Pickett and George Pickens is really starting to show. So you have that. You had a blown 3rd and short coverage that resulted in a Calvin Austin 70-yard catch and run for a touchdown. So you had that going on as well. On the Pittsburgh side, you really had a really impressive day on the defense. That Levi Wallace had 4 passes defended. He was matched up against Devontae Adams for pretty much the majority of the game. So a really tough assignment he had there. Very well defending him, at times deflecting passes. And he also had 2 interceptions on Jimmy Garoppolo for the day. So just real solid play out of him, and just playing real black and blue football against the Raiders. So you have that going on. And yeah, we'll when I got Triggs here, we'll talk about more about my Raiders when he's here. But yeah, definite tough game to swallow going on with that. So all right. So we got that. We got some of these games that are a little low scoring. Let's go to a high scoring game. So let's go to the highest scoring game of the week, and that is the Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins. So I thought this was bizarre. When I looked at Denver's stat line, it is nearly identical to what they did last week, right? So you had a few catches out of Menzel Mims. He plays outside, and he plays really well out there, pretty much 100 yards receiving um, and a score. And then when it comes to the inside, you have more targets out of Jerry Jeudy, and you also have more targets outside with Cortland Sutton. So you can pretty much tell that Russell Wilson really wants to operate with Jeudy and Sutton first, but then he wants to take those deep shots to Menzel Mims. So that's how this offense is operating right now. And I thought that we would have more of a showing of what Russell Wilson thrives on, which is the tight end position. But yet, for the second straight week, it did not happen. So, not a single reception out of Adam Troutman, who is replacing Greg Dulcich. So, there's been no tight end production for the last 2 weeks. I don't know what exactly is going on with this offense when it comes to that. Is this something where Sean Payne says, okay, well, we're getting this out of Russell Wilson? Can Jared Stidham do that kind of production as well, considering what he did at the end of the Raiders season last year? And if him and Russell Wilson just aren't getting on the same page, then just see what you got and roll with it. So it is what it is, but those receiving targets that Denver has for the amount of injuries they lost is impressive. But it's still not good enough against a team that's as good as Miami. Miami's just absolutely loaded, especially with speed. If you actually look at NFL Next Gen stats, the 6 fastest plays in the NFL through 3 weeks have all been Miami Dolphins, whether it's been Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Devin Achane, especially yesterday, and Raheem Mostert. Those guys are just absolutely speed demons. They run at about 21 to 22 miles per hour when they really start to break away. So really impressive there. Devin Achane is a guy that both myself and Triggs talked about, and we really like this guy. But he had that shoulder issue going into training camp. We didn't know exactly what was going on between Salvin Ahmed and Jeff Wilson kind of being banged up. Was that going to lead up to Achane coming up through to be a backup to Raheem Mostert? So it was what it was. Actually had a guy in my fantasy league drop Devin Achane, and I got a little tied up. Didn't get to it, but that is definitely a waiver pickup that I wish I would have gotten. But even looking at it too, like looking at the fantasy draft of how you could be selecting these running backs and their handcuffs, there were true opportunities to get Mostert and Achane way late in your drafts. So especially for us being a 16-team league, those are guys that you could acquire in rounds 8, 10, 12, and so on. So that would be a dynamite crew to get. Even looking at next year, if you're trying to build things, I mean, when it comes to my team, I've built the trio of Tony Pollard, Rico Dowdle, and Deuce Vaughn because I want to make sure I have all those. Imagine if you had the handcuffs of the Miami Dolphins and you went into games and started multiple Miami Dolphin running backs along with Tyreek Hill. I went up against Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill this week, and there's nothing you can do about it. Those are two guys that explode. They basically will get 90 points by themselves. It's absolutely devastating, but incredibly impressive to see. So between the swagger, the confidence that Tua Tagovailoa is playing with, and you know that this is a team that, seeing what happened to Tua last year and knowing what they can do with that run game, that they invest in their offensive line. So just incredibly impressive with how they're working this. Their defense is led by Vic Fangio. They are going to play very, very strong defense. So pretty cool seeing how this team is working and seeing how this team with that speed is going to evolve over time. Are they going to hold up for the 20 games of the season? And if Tua does go down, would a Skylar Thompson or a Mike White step in and still be able to continue that offense? I kind of have more confidence with Skylar. Mike White, not so much, but we'll see. So that's a pretty cool stuff that we had out of that Dolphins Broncos game. So pretty cool there. Looking at some of these other games, we had the Browns and the Titans. So this was a game that I definitely thought the Browns would take care of business, considering especially how it was kind of weird how they lost to the Steelers the previous week. And again, Deshaun Watson really keeps feeding Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is definitely one of his favorite targets. I think he came in second. Yep. So he came in second to Elijah Dotson working the slot, but yet Amari Cooper still had over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. Just a really solid day going on against the Titans, who are they may not be the greatest offense, but they are a Mike Vrabel defensive-oriented team. So it is what is there. But when you really talk defense in this game, I think the important thing to note is Cleveland. So Cleveland's defense is incredibly good against the run. This might be the best team against the run in the entire NFL. In the last 2 weeks, they gave up combined 130 yards to both the Steelers and Joe Mixon and those Bengals week 1. Week 3 against Derrick Henry and Tajay Sharp, 30 yards, no touchdowns, nothing. That is it. Granted that Tennessee offense is very stale, especially with Tannehill at quarterback. It's a really bad football team. But I do like seeing how the Browns did that. This was probably Deshaun Watson's best game, even though that may not be saying much. But it is what it is. So got that going on there. A little bit of Monday Night Football update. So we're getting towards the end of the first half. Looks like we got about 200 total yards on the Eagles, about just under 100 out of Tampa, and we got a score of 10-3. So this is possibly a game that I know some people, especially our guy, your boy, DJ Triggs, picked an upset in this one. And it's justified. I definitely give him that. It's a tight one. It's kind of close outside that touchdown. But you have that strong defense out of the Buccaneers, right? So even though that it's 10-3, I mean, for giving up only 10 points in the first half to the Eagles is still very impressive, especially with the Buccaneers playing in a division that really doesn't have much offense, right? So between the Panthers, the Falcons, the Saints, and especially the Saints now without Derek Carr, it's just not as scary of a division. I even think the Panthers in that division with Andy Dalton is definitely a better offense than with Bryce Young. So it is what it is, but even then, it's not saying much. So this game may be a Tampa game. Looks like the rain is really starting to pour down in Tampa. But yeah, little insight to some Monday night action. So going with another NFC South team, we got those New Orleans Saints. So this was a game that Derek Carr got hurt, kind of a low-scoring game, but a game where I thought that it would probably be kind of tight and that you would start to see like possibly one of these receivers for the Green Bay Packers get kind of locked down, whether it was like maybe a Romeo Doubs or possibly someone outside. But I don't know. It just really looks like they kind of had their way. They were able to muster up that offense. Not totally explosive, but still you had solid games out of Romeo Doubs. And looks like that middle of the field is still a pretty good way to attack the New Orleans defense. So no touchdowns, but still you had you had 9 receptions and you had over 100 yards receiving between Jaden Reed and Luke Musgrave. So pretty impressive there. Looks like they were targeted like 15 times as well. So that's wow. That's even more impressive with Romeo Doubs. I mean, the guy was targeted 12 times, but more than likely my guess is he probably had Marshawn Lattimore on him pretty tight. So out of those 12, he only came down with 5 of them. But pretty good stuff there. Pretty impressive. And on the Green Bay side, it kind of looks like I mean, granted, there was the injury to Carr, so that may have definitely had an impact on how that offense operated mid-game. But you had a pretty strong day out of Chris Olave. And then not too great out of Michael Thomas. But that was it. That was literally their entire passing game. Nothing out of Shaheed, very little out of the tight ends. And that was it for the Saints. And I know this game came down to a missed field goal by the Saints, but that's how it works. I think the thing I definitely want to see too out of Jordan Love moving forward is we definitely want to see that completion percentage move up. So he's definitely had a lot of games recently where it's like that completion percentage is kind of hovering around 50%. So this is something that I want to look at. I really want to see too, is he having footwork problems? I mean, I can tell you watching my Raider games, Jimmy G completely has footwork problems, and it shows, and it results in multiple interceptions. So even in this game, you have one interception from Jordan Love. Did it come from bad footwork? I don't know. We'll see. But that's something that's going on there is if he sees problems with the feet, it starts to follow its way up to the hands. So you can definitely take that away from this performance here. So that's what we got with the Saints and the Packers. So interesting game going on there. Just want to take a look at who we got, if anyone's got anything. If you got anything you want me to talk about, just give me a holler, and I'll see what I can do to get to that. So definitely let me know if you see anything. But yeah, let's go back to some more games, and let's see who else we got up here on the docket. Oh, you know what? Let's go to Thursday Night Football. Almost totally forgot about that from last week. So you have the Giants against the Niners. No Saquon Barkley in this game, but yet again, just a total domination by the 49ers. You had Brock Purdy really rebounding from the previous week, throwing for over 300 yards, 2 scores. You had Christian McCaffrey having a really solid day with 85 yards rushing and a score. Deebo Samuel really starting to take that almost like the alternate to Christian McCaffrey in a way, but this time doing it more in the passing game. So 6 receptions out of Deebo Samuel for 130 yards and a score. Very impressive. George Kittle stepped up and had more of a dominating performance. And over the last few weeks, he's probably been banged up from that groin injury. So now you have 90 yards on the day out of George Kittle. No touchdowns, but still a solid day out of him. Probably more that's coming in the future. But then when we get to the Giants side, just a real rough day going on here. Daniel Jones absolutely had nothing going on. The yardage was really bad, just over 100 and a pick. Looking at the rushing game, completely non-existent. We're talking like 30 yards total for everyone that ran the ball. Just really, really rough. And looking at the receiving game here, this is interesting. This is probably the first game where Darren Waller was not even close to being the lead receiver for the New York Giants. And I think that speaks volumes about the 49ers defense, completely locking down everyone, especially the tight end in Darren Waller. So big thing for fantasy going forward is focus on if you have a tight end going up against San Francisco. That may be something you truly want to avoid, considering how Darren Waller was completely negated in this matchup. So Paris Campbell led that team in targets, and it was what it was there. So that's what we got out of the Giants and the Niners game from last Thursday night. So we got that, and who else we got here? So we got the Chargers and the Vikings. So this game on Sunday, you finally had 2 teams that pretty much are really good offenses, but really struggle at defense. And that showed. Pretty much these teams were just back and forth all game. And you really get a great showing out of Justin Herbert finally for the season. So now you get 400 yards out of him, 3 scores. And the downside of this game is that you lose a really talented receiver in Mike Williams. So you're pretty much losing that number 1 target outside. So you got Keenan Allen working the slot, and then you have Mike Williams outside. But even though this Brian Flores defense is kind of looking kind of good, kind of interesting at times, just completely no matchup for the LA Chargers and how that offense is so high octane. But now losing Mike Williams will definitely have an impact on that. You're going to probably see more of a Quentin Johnson, more Josh Palmer. Looks like Gerald Everett was pretty heavily involved. Not a lot of yardage, but definitely a good amount of targets there. So that's kind of what you're getting out of the LA Chargers. And again, looking at that rushing side, not having Austin Eckler is having a huge impact on this team. So this is now the second straight week that without Austin Eckler, the run game is almost non-existent. There's very little production out of Josh Kelly. He's not really showing it. A little bit of Isaiah Spiller, no Elijah Dotson whatsoever. Not sure if he's got an injury or whatnot, but he's non-existent in this game completely. So that's what you got going on with the LA Chargers, especially on offense. Looking on the Minnesota side and what's going on there, this is a team that actually just acquired Cam Akers a few days ago. So he's gave you that new piece coming into that offense. Especially with the Vikings head coach being friends with Sean McVay, kind of makes it easier to negotiate a deal and bring in players that you're familiar with between those two guys. So that'll be a good added option to this team, and probably going to take some carries away from Alexander Mattison. But Cam Akers is a complete player. He is a player who can really pass catch and run with the ball very well. Had some devastating Achilles injuries, but it is what it is. I do like the piece of bringing him in and actually having a real solid number one running back as opposed to operating a backup running back as your number one with Alexander Mattison. So you got that going on there. And but the passing offense pretty much held up. It looks like when it comes to pretty much everyone against the LA Chargers, you can pretty much attack them outside. Not too much production out of the slot, yet you did have KJ Osborne score one touchdown off a 30, it looks like a 36-yard catch and run here. But yeah, I mean, Justin Jefferson just absolutely had a day, about 150 yards and a touchdown. TJ Hawkinson getting a ton of targets for about 80 yards on the day. Jordan Addison showing up there as well. But pretty much the way this works is you have Justin Jefferson as your number one. Then you really look at a TJ Hawkinson. And then after that, you're kind of making your check around, hey, do I have KJ Osborne work in the middle of the field, or do I have another deep option possibly off of Jordan Addison? So that's pretty much how those progressions are going to work for Kirk Cousins game in, game out with that. So that's what you got there. Pretty tight game, pretty high scoring game. 28-24, so pretty much what we expected. But the LA Chargers finally get their first win on the season when they've been involved in multiple shootouts and just have not ever had the defense to hold up with how their offense performs. So, a little different there, but it works when you have a team on the opposing side that's got the same problems that you have with that. So, a little interesting going on. A little bit of a shout out to the other Monday Night Football game. So again, we got two Monday Night Football games, kind of wild. But the Rams and the Bengals going on right now. So this is a game that, again, we lost. Cameron Akers is gone. Him and Sean McVay have not gone along, even dating back to last season. So that's definitely why that trade sent him out of town. But this is a game that going into it, I really felt that this would really benefit Kyren Williams. Teams have absolutely been able to run and dominate that front line of the Cincinnati Bengals. So considering how the Rams have performed pretty much the first 2 weeks of the season against Seattle and San Francisco, now you get a good match up against the Bengals. I expect to see a good day out of Kyren Williams today. And right now, not much, but about midway through the first quarter, we got the Rams up 3-0, and they have the ball back on their side of the field to start their drive. So you got that going on there. But so we got that. Just checking in on the crowd, seeing who we got here. All right. And going back to more of these games. So we just keep moving along here. So going to our next game, going to the Buffalo Bills and Washington Commanders. And this was a game that I thought Washington would really step up considering how they played last week. But I also thought too that like this is a game where they could kind of nullify those tight ends of the Buffalo Bills. But the problem with that is you still have those threats outside, and that's what Washington does. Is they kind of contain the middle of the field, but they really let you kind of do what you want and expose the outside of the defense of the Washington football team. And that doesn't work well when you play against guys like Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. So I was expecting pretty much Kincaid and Dawson Knox not to do much. But then I did realize that, oh, they're probably going to have a lot of success outside and a lot of success with Josh Allen on the day. I was wrong about Josh Allen getting a lot of success. Looks like he completed about 2/3 of his passes, but it looks like they kind of were working things outside. So again, yeah, like one of those guys, Stephon Diggs, had a day. He went for 111 yards, and then you only had one reception out of Gabe Davis, but it got a touchdown for 35. So that's it. I mean, that Washington defense is really, really stingy. But the main thing you got going on here in this blowout victory from the Bills and the Commanders is you had a lot of short field yardage. So between Josh Allen and Latavius Murray and James Cook all carrying the rock, that's how they were able to rack up these points. And it also helps, too, that Buffalo themselves had a good defense against Sam Howell. I know there was a lot of talk about Sam Howell last week being a really good-looking young quarterback, but I also feel, too, that this is a guy that has really nice pieces outside. He has two great running backs, but the problem, too, with this game is he lost a guy that he had a lot of chemistry with in Logan Thomas. So he gets banged up. He's not in this game. You lose a really important piece against the Buffalo Bills, and it shows. Just kind of small production with the whole receiving core of Washington. But the biggest problem in this game is that Sam Howell definitely got exposed against Buffalo and had 4 interceptions, and his offensive line did nothing to support him. He got sacked 9 times. So just an immense amount of pressure and very little pass protection coming from that Washington football team. So definitely something to keep track of going forward, especially when this team plays against a team like Philadelphia that can totally bring the house at a quarterback. It's definitely something that now you got to keep track of with that team. So big blowout victory for Buffalo, big rebound. But when it came to Josh Allen, when he goes up against a good defense, those numbers definitely take a significant drop. So we'll see what happens next week with the Bills and who they play. So let's go to another game. Interesting upset that happened in Baltimore. And a team with the Ravens that we thought was really looking good. I've personally liked their offensive line a lot. But now it's starting to show that maybe it's not as great as we thought. So you have Lamar Jackson get sacked 4 times. The yardage really wasn't there on Lamar Jackson. I was expecting possibly some more chemistry with Zay Flowers, yet I do understand that Indianapolis is good against the slot. And taking away your number 1 slot receiver, and there is no Odell Beckham threat outside, makes it what it is. So kind of interesting there with how that's shaken up. Yeah, it looks interesting. I mean, Baltimore being banged up as they are bringing more pieces back on offense. So now you do have Gus Edwards is there. Melvin Gordon's back into that offense as well. Even Kenyon Drake is getting a few carries too with the Baltimore Ravens. So you got that going on with the Indianapolis Colts. In this game, you got no Anthony Richardson, so he's still banged up from the last few weeks. You got Gardner Minshew coming in playing pretty much average football. So he's a guy that he doesn't really go for 300 yards, but in this game he goes for 220, 1 touchdown, no interception. It's pretty much a guy who is a manager. So like we talked about Dak Prescott, Desmond Ridder, Jimmy Garoppolo, like these are guys that are pretty much just in there to just keep the chains moving. They're not they're not players that can really take over a game and just make it their own and stretch a defense. So that's what you got going on there. Zach Moss is pretty much really starting to step in for Jonathan Taylor. And yeah, pretty solid showing from him. So about 30 carries of the rock, about 120 yards on the day. So about 4 yards per carry. Pretty solid. Pretty much if you can average about 4 or 5 yards a carry, that's what you want your running backs doing. So it's all right there. But with Minshew and how he's working this offense, he's really starting to pretty much work the outside against Baltimore. So you got 9 receptions out of Michael Pittman, and it looks like you got 8 out of Josh Downs. So it is what it is for the day. Not the greatest offensive matchup, but yeah, they pulled that upset on Baltimore. Baltimore had that late field goal try out of Tucker, but Justin just hit the crossbar right at the end of that game. So kind of a rare miss on a game-winning try from Justin Tucker, but pretty cool game we got going on there. So gonna look back, see if we got anything going on. All right, cool. So going back to the games, now we'll go to Seattle. So we'll take a look at those Seahawks against the Panthers. And this is a game, too, that had no Bryce Young in it. So I feel that Carolina has a better offense with Andy Dalton. He played well in New Orleans. He definitely showed that he can still sling it in today's NFL. He had really good chemistry with Chris Olave last season. And I really think, too, that Bryce Young is in there just because they just want to give him the reps, just give him the experience and processing the information that it takes in today's NFL. So that's pretty much what we got going on there. And but he's nowhere near the offensive threat that Andy Dalton is. And even Andy Dalton is even mobile, too. Like, he does have that run option that he can do as well. But pretty much just a solid day in the air out of Andy Dalton. Thrown for over 300 yards, 360-ish, and 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. So real solid offensive performance out of Andy Dalton. And pretty much his favorite target, again, was the slot. So when it comes to that offense, and especially playing against Seattle, where they're kind of really solid outside, probably the best place to attack Seattle is the middle of the field, right? So you had a really big day out of Adam Thielen. Very little out of Hayden Hurst. So you got that going on. But yeah, you had some things going on with the outside with DJ Shark and Terrence Marshall. So that's going on. I mean, definitely not the volume that Adam Thielen had, but just still a pretty solid day. I mean, you might actually just be able to just attack these guys all over except with the tight end. So yeah, definitely expected more out of Hayden Hurst in this game. But that's kind of how that shook out with the Panthers. On the Seahawks side, you had Geno Smith. Again, like, I think he is pretty much a game manager. He is a guy that has a very good offensive line up there in Seattle. And how ironic that was Russell Wilson's biggest complaint, and then he leaves and Seattle's offensive line is solid. So you got that going on. Just 1 touchdown, 1 interception on the day. Big rushing production out of Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet. More so with Walker when he's healthy. But that's the thing, is like, if Kenneth Walker is solid and healthy and ready to go, he is an excellent running back. And he showed. I mean, he averaged pretty much 5 yards a carry, ran the ball for about 100 yards on the day and 2 scores. So Kenneth Walker is solid if he is playing. If not, then this is a guy that is probably really high up there on having that handcuff in a young guy like Zach Charbonnet. Charbonnet is really solid, but again, too, if you just don't have the reps or the backs, or if you're the backup, then you absolutely have to have Kenneth Walker. So kind of interesting how that team shakes out. When it came to the receiving part of this game, this was more of a DK Metcalf game. So it looks like Carolina really took care of the slot against Jackson Smith and Jigba. Not really seeing much out of the tight end position either in Noah Fant or Colby Parkinson. So actually you got some. You got almost 80 yards receiving between those two, but you have very little out of Jackson Smith and Jigba. Outside, they went hard with DK Metcalf. So about 8 targets on him. He pulls in about 6 of them for about 100-ish yards. And then opposite him with Tyler Lockett, you had many targets. You had 7 targets out of Tyler, but he only hauled in 3 of them for 34 yards. So looks like that Carolina defense was very focused on Tyler Lockett. So as much as Carolina is not a good-looking team, they will probably focus on your number 1 receiver outside and try to lock that guy down as they did with Tyler Lockett. So kind of interesting takeaways with those Carolina Panthers. So you got that going on there. Yeah, so pretty interesting that game ended up being a high-scoring game, but it's a game that going into it, especially being on the betting side, seeing Andy Dalton in that game, to me, is more concerning, especially from the defensive side, knowing that you're going up against an Andy Dalton instead of a Bryce Young. So you got a guy who's going to make less mistakes and have more of an impact throwing the ball as well. So I think this Carolina team is absolutely much better under Andy Dalton. We'll just see how they go moving forward. It is what it is. So we got that, and I want to say we got one more game left outside of these games that are going on today. So, yep, looks like our last game that we're covering is the Dallas Cowboys and the Arizona Cardinals. So, really interesting upset here. And, like, my favorite thing that I like looking at Arizona, and they showed this in the preseason, is that they have a very solid offensive line. And already looking at this, Josh Dobbs, the quarterback for Arizona in place of Kyler Murray, was only hit 2 times for the sacks. And let's look at pretty much how all that pressure was that came at him. So, yeah, he's got a total of four hits, 2 from DeMarcus Lawrence, 2 from Micah Parsons. And then on the sacks, again, only 2. And again, it's DeMarcus Lawrence and Micah Parsons with those. And then for the tackles for loss for the running backs, okay, so they were hit about 6 times. But then when it comes to the rushing attack, how did that go? Did that really have much of an impact on the run game? I don't think it did, because that Arizona run game is still producing. James Conner had about 100 yards, and he's been a guy who's been averaging like 60 to 70 yards a game, and doing this knowing that he's probably the main focus of opposing defenses. So I think it's really showing that offensive line for Arizona is pretty solid. I mean, he did it off of only 15 carries, averaged about 7 yards a carry in this game. His biggest run was about 26 yards. So just really, really solid out of James Conner. I do like how this team is really running the ball and playing with good offensive line play. So even though your quarterback is not doing all that hot with Josh Dobbs, it's still resulting in really good complementary football. On the receiving side of Arizona, they had not the greatest day, but looks like Hollywood Brown was kind of their big guy, about 60 yards and a score. And then new name here, I'm seeing Michael Wilson, 2 catches for 86. So it looks like he had some breakaway runs out of that guy. But when it comes to that, the slot really got shut down between Zach Ertz and Rondale Moore. Very little production, just over 10 yards off of 8 targets. Not much going on there. So if you're starting tight ends against Dallas or slot receivers against Dallas, you may want to avoid that. But yeah, going back to what we said too with Dak Prescott being a game manager, that is really, really showing up in this game. So, and in this game too, like, you need him to step up even more because you don't have Trayvon Diggs. So not having Trayvon Diggs, I know it's the game that we picked earlier in the week before we knew about the Trayvon Diggs injury that occurred in practice. But when you lose that, now your defense really takes a step back, because he completely shuts down that receiver on his side of the field looking at what he did compared to Stephon Gilmore was worlds apart. So now if those outside receivers are really starting to actually have their way against the Cowboys, that means Dallas is going to be in more higher scoring games and is going to require more performance out of Dak Prescott. And in this game, it showed he wasn't able to produce as high as they needed him to produce. So Dak had about 250 yards throwing, just one touchdown and one interception. If they have those interceptions, they are absolutely detrimental to this offense now as it is. They still, the heart of this offense still goes through Tony Pollard. Another big day out of him in this game. Over 120 yards rushing. Wonder if he had, didn't really have a catch. Looks like it was kind of one of those behind the line of scrimmage passes, but it is what it is. Looking at the how the receiving game worked too. Wow, this is impressive. Arizona's good against the slot. So when it comes to their slot receiver, their tight ends, pretty much just under. Actually, no, it looks right at 100 yards receiving on the day. So CeeDee Lamb only four catches, targeted 7 times for just 53 yards. Their biggest receiver was Michael Gallup. A lot of big catches outside. Had about 92 yards receiving on the day. So that's how you're going to attack Arizona. You're going to attack Arizona outside and running the football. So if you have a good run game and you have good receivers outside, you're going to win those football games. Again, too, like it's hard to get that pressure to the quarterback, but that's what it's going to take. You can run the ball, you can get your guys outside, and it looks like too from those tackles for losses that you can kind of stop the running game behind the line of scrimmage. So if it ever gets to a game where James Conner just doesn't have a good day, they're definitely going to lose those games. So I would say that's kind of your script on how to play against the Cardinals. So even though it's a team that's 1-2, they have some things and they can kind of play some good football here and there. But it takes a team like a game manager quarterback like Dak Prescott to show that vulnerability that the Arizona Cardinals can attack. So that's kind of how that game went. Kind of interesting, definitely an upset, and definitely went against the grain of how myself and Triggs picked this game. But again, you get that Trayvon Diggs injury later in the week, and that single injury just single-handedly flipped the entire season of Dallas. I mean, we had Dallas as probably a top 3 team in the entire NFL, and now we have serious question marks about this team moving forward. So pretty interesting how things are shaking out there. I mean, I think this really gives us more confidence about Philadelphia moving forward and winning this division into the future. So that's how it shakes out. That's how we got all the games going for now for the week. So looks like we got some action going on with Philly and Tampa. Looks like they just went into halftime. You got the Eagles up 13-3. And looks like you got the Rams and Cincy just beginning the second quarter of their game with the Bengals having ball to start off here. And it looks like they are driving into LA territory. So they are on that side of the field, and we'll see what happens. But got some stuff going on there. And yeah, I think that's everything we got for the night. So got through all the games. We'll be back here again tomorrow, 7 o'clock Central, and we'll see you then. So we'll see. Hopefully I have our guy, DJ Triggs, tomorrow. See if he's feeling a little bit better, fighting through some sickness going around. But we'll make it happen. We'll be back here 7 o'clock tomorrow, no matter what. Again, you can check us out here on all of our socials, and those game reviews that we posted over the week of week 2. We are going to go at it again and keep those running throughout the season. So these tidbits that I'm throwing out here for each and every game, we're going to make those for every single matchup that you see moving forward. So really hope that that's giving you guys some really good insight and giving you some info for whether you bet on the games, whether you play fantasy or you just enjoy watching the games in general. you have some good ideas of how teams are matching up on the other side of the ball, or how teams are attacking those teams. So pretty good stuff here, but thanks again for watching, and hopefully we'll see you here tomorrow. So I'm Steve Metrics, No Debate Sports, and we'll see you next time. And that's No Debate.